The feeling of being awake when the whole world is asleep is terrible in one word. So to cope with that, I took a job at this mental institution as a night guard. They offered the job and I accepted straight away. Filled in a couple of forms, and that was that. It seemed perfect. If I was going to be awake anyway, I might as well get paid for it. It wasn't difficult. My duties consisted mainly of walking through the softly carpeted halls every hour or so, checking that the security doors were locked, and helping myself to as many free cups of coffee as I could. There were always 2 nurses on call in case of a medical emergency, but they mostly slept through their shifts, so I barely saw them. My contact with the patients was limited. There seemed to be perhaps 15 or 20 of them, with some there for extended periods and others coming and going on almost a daily basis. I only ever saw them when they were asleep. It was strange seeing them like that, robbed of all context. They could have been bankers or beggars, for all I knew. In the staff room, watching over the half-drunk leftovers of other people's coffee and dog-eared magazines was a bank of CCTV monitors wired up to the patients' rooms so that the staff could keep an eye on them whenever they needed to. I spent most of my time there when I wasn't patrolling the corridors. It was oddly relaxing to watch all these strangers sleeping peacefully in their beds throughout the night, stirring gently every so often as they dreamed their unknown dreams. It gave me comfort to watch them all lying there, dead to the world, with me as their silent custodian. Among these patients, 2 to 3 suffered from somnambulism, that is sleepwalking. Well, the doctors let them be on their own until they come out to be an immediate threat. Honestly, unlike other mental institutions, the patients here were too old to show violent traits. Also, the windows were bolted and made of toughened glass, and all exterior doors were kept securely locked. I used to come across them in the halls and corridors. Sickly patients, whispering to themselves while they performed odd and jumbled actions. One night, I was walking down one of the usual corridors, echoing with the sounds of snoring of the patients, when I came across one of the usual sleepwalkers. An old woman, swollen and red-faced, wearing blue pajamas and an odd pink dressing gown that flapped open as she walked. She seemed entirely unaware of the world around her. As I approached, she stopped facing her back at me while standing near the pale white wall. She was as motionless as a statue, with her face only millimeters away from the damped wall. Suddenly, she spoke as I tried to walk past.
You are gonna do a terrible thing.
I stopped myself and gazed confusingly at her thin gray hair dangling in the air slowly. I'm sorry, she said again.
You are going to do a terrible thing.
In that same 1,000-year-old voice. Are you talking to me?
There's no one else here.
That was true, but usually, the sleepwalkers are too wrapped up in their own nocturnal fixations to register other people, let alone speak directly to them. This was something of a novelty. My curiosity was piqued. What do you mean?
You are going to do a terrible, terrible thing, and there will be no one to blame but yourself.
You should probably go back to bed. The woman chuckled very creepily, and I felt my heart skipping 3 times faster.
What do you think you're doing here?
She asked without turning her face at me. I couldn't help but laugh while saying, I work here, looking after you guys.
You really think you can just walk into a job like that off the street? In a medical facility of all places?
There was no way she could have known about that. She went on saying,
Is it very plausible? Is it? In fact, when you think about it, nothing about this place really adds up. You really haven't thought this through.
I just stood there staring, with the wonder and a sense of discomfort rising in my chest. Maybe I was hallucinating again. I have to go, I mumbled, unsure of what else to do. My palms were filled with sweat. I walked down the corridor, breathing an inward sigh of relief, turning back to this weird woman. Her downright confrontational behavior made me question, was she even sleepwalking in the first place? I went to the staff room with a cloudy mind. I was surprised to see one of the nurses at the table, a fresh cup of mud-brown coffee steaming in front of her. She too sat facing her back to me. The patients are lively tonight, I said.
You can't hide from things forever.
It was the exact same voice I heard a few moments back from that patient's mouth.
Sooner or later, you'll have to face reality. And the longer you leave it, the worse it will be.
It felt as though an electric shock had rattled through my body. I ran around the table to see her face, but when I did, I found that her eyes were closed and she wore this sanguine expression of someone lost in a deep and dreamless sleep. There was a very disturbing grin residing on her meditating face. Small bubbles were forming at the corner of her lips. Just then, the bank of TV screens on the wall behind me fizzed and crackled, lighting up the cramped little room with a brief flare like a flash of lightning from behind a dark cloud. I turned to face them and saw blood dripping down from those CCTV screens. But one by one, a picture flickered into life on each of the monitors, each showing a different scene in grainy black and white. It took me a moment to resolve the overexposed images into recognizable shapes and figures. On each screen, the camera showed a human figure standing in the hallway while jerking his head and entire body in a possessed manner. All at once, every screen exploded, creating a huge collision. In the chaos of motion, I could see all the patients standing right in front of me with wide-eyed and panic-stricken faces. Their mouths were stretched open in silent screams. It took me some time to notice inside their mouth, all of their tongues were cut off. There they stood like statues. I screamed, saying, "What the hell? Why are you doing this to me?" None of them replied. Suddenly, that woman whom I met in the hallway came out from the dark corner and stood in front of my face. For the first time, I saw her, and in that very second, I recognized her. She has been my first victim. She was the first person enlisted in my list as I set out to be the nocturnal creature, killing poor people to cope with my insomniac, maniac mind. But you are dead. What is this place? I don't want to be here. Slowly, I started recognizing each one of these patients. They were all my victims once. Murdering them in the most brutal way possible landed me up in this mental institution. I would have gone to lifetime imprisonment or hanged till death, but I forced my lawyer to set up my case in a more cunning way. I told him to present me as a mentally sick person in front of the court. I thought it would be easy to spend time in an asylum than going to prison. But now, I don't want to be here anymore. I am sick and tired of being scared in my sleep. I wake up every morning drenched in sweat inside this small room, bolted up with the toughest metal bars. I haven't seen the world outside for days. Now I wish if I have just died with capital punishment. What is the point of living like this? I screamed and woke up in my bunk again. It was another nightmare. Same as last night. I rushed to the iron bars and grasped them with all my strength. Please, kill me! I don't want to be here anymore! Just kill me and set me free from this place! I heard two guards standing near my cell and saying, "Again? This patient is getting annoying day by day." The other guard replied, "Well, this is what happened when you are locked up in a freak house with the realization of murdering 12 people without mercy. This sucker deserves this." No matter how much I screamed or pleaded, no one came to help me. I screamed and eventually tired myself out. The entire day went by, and when the guard passed in the food tray after leaving for the night, I realized the impending doom is coming back again. Soon, I'll pass out and join my night guard job in this freak house. It's hard to imagine ever leaving. I try to stay awake, but I never succeed. Even though I know some terrible nightmares are awaiting me on the other side of sleep.